What if I told you that The Deadseat, a game that advertises itself as a horror game where you play a handheld console in the back seat during a long drive home, is actually about overcoming trauma, and in doing so, defeating a centuries-old mythological deity? Well, it's all that, and it's also terrifying. Oh, I didn't like that. Didn't like that one bit. So, slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. On a first glance, this game seems fairly straightforward. Based on all of its marketing and the videos and thumbnails that get put out by most YouTubers, you can pretty quickly gather that we're playing as Caleb. His parents are having an argument on the drive home from Grandma's, and Caleb tries to find an escape, and luckily we have our legally distinct Game Kid. Not a Game Boy, also it's more like a DS, but it's a Game Kid. But when you open the Game Kid to play, you see a pixelated version of what's going on in the real world. Your car driving down a long, winding road in the woods. Your game then starts talking to you, promising that if you follow its instructions and go throughout your journey, you'll find the Happy Cave, something that, instead of being on your Game Kid, takes up the full screen. Your game promises that the Happy Cave is filled with new friends and family that won't fight, a safe place for Caleb. You'd be free, your worries a thing of the past. But as you begin to play your Game Kid warns you that there's something on top of your car, and using your camera you flash it away. This, as we find out, is Caleb's inner demon, something that torments him throughout the entire game and something that's keeping him from making it to the Happy Cave. And just like that, we're introduced to the main gameplay throughout the entirety of the Deadseat. You collect items to help protect yourself, and then you steer the car in your Game Kid while protecting your real car with your camera, all the while trying to move the car further to the Happy Cave. At this point, by like the end of Night 1, beginning of Night 2, myself and many players started piecing together what this game is trying to tell us. A lot of horror is typically some sort of metaphor for something, and this seems like a very cut and dry metaphor. This game is about being a child in an abusive household and finding escape through your games and other imagination. The demon is a manifestation of his parents' constant fighting, culminating in this two-headed monster that tortures Caleb for the entire runtime. And his only defense is hidden in his game, the means of his escape, the thing he buries himself in to ignore the world around him. And as the game progresses, this concept gets clearer and clearer. Your Game Kid keeps promising you that if you just play along and keep your demons at bay, you'll make it to the Happy Cave. But it is noteworthy that about halfway through, your real-life mother senses that something is off, saying that she has this unshakable feeling of doom. But your parents fight and they soon forget it. Your game calms you down though. The Game Kid itself tells you that Caleb's mind is trying to trick him, and not to trust the visions he's receiving, but instead trust your Game Kid. It is worthwhile to note that this is said after the argument, implying that the visions Caleb is getting is just his parents arguing. But all the while throughout this game, your Game Kid is promising a full and complete escape, not just temporary relief, but a new family, a new place to live. And as much as this game seems in Caleb's head, the Game Kid keeps insisting that it isn't. I am not like the others, child. I am very real. It's as if your Game Kid is drawing a distinction between itself and the demon you're protecting Caleb from. And for the first 5 nights of this game, that's pretty much it. All Caleb really has to do is survive. Plausibly, all of this game could be taking place within Caleb's own imagination. He never leaves the car. If you don't lose, he's never meaningfully hurt, and we don't know what happens after you lose, so we can't tell if he would be meaningfully hurt. And I and many others thought this is what the game was going to be. That if we do these 5 nights successfully, we'll beat his inner demon, reach the Happy Cave, and Caleb will get a good night's rest, fully ignoring his parents arguing. Maybe it'll be cheesy and they'll make up by the end of the game, who knows, but that's what the game has presented so far, until you get to Night 5, which is the first time the Game Kid directly asks Caleb to do something for it. The upcoming turn is wrong. You must go left instead, and then you will no longer be in the Deadseat. The Game Kid is directly telling Caleb that his parents will turn right, but he needs to make sure the car goes left. But just as your Game Kid tells you this, your inner demon appears before you and disagrees. The boy is still afraid. Can you blame him? Look at us. This poisonous form. We look as we should. The boy must stay. The boy must stay. And unlike the rest of the game, when we finally make it to the end of Night 5, Caleb does something that isn't imaginary. He sees it through his own imagination. As he reaches to the front seat and grabs the wheel, the demons that represent his parents screaming at him to stop, but in the background, you hear real screams. We fade up to a gruesome and completely different scene than anything we've seen in the game so far. Caleb's parents are dead in the front seat, and somehow Caleb survived in the back, but his legs seem injured and he's still very hungry. Days pass, and eventually he does what he has to do to survive in that car until his legs heal. And eventually, after several days have passed, and all of Caleb's available food is gone, the game kid turns on and tells us that we've done everything right and we're ready to enter the happy cave now that our legs have healed. Caleb himself says, "I'm ready." And for the second time in the entire game, Caleb meaningfully moves, exiting the car and walking straight into the woods. Soon a choir appears around him, singing his praises. Good boy. Good boy. Sung by the surrounding deer, rabbits, and flowers, as the forest around us becomes more and more pixelated like our game. And we finally see it, the happy cave itself. Walking inside, everything goes dark, and eventually we can't hear the choir, until these hands and this shadowed face appears before us, speaking in the same font and same style as our game kid, the only thing that talks like that in the entire game. He welcomes us home, grabs us, and the game ends. Up until the very end of Night 5, this was a fairly straightforward metaphor as a horror game for child neglect and abuse. We all thought we knew where this was going. We put together the lore in front of us that was presented, and we assumed what the ending would be. And no one was ready for what the ending was. Because all of us, Caleb, myself, and many of you, were tricked right from the start. The game kid wasn't just a DS, it wasn't Caleb's imagination or intuition. All along, the game kid was the luring voice, the only thing we see in this entire game that speaks with these text boxes. Ay, 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 ay. If you try to play hard mode first, the Deadseat warns you. It basically says this won't make sense until you play the normal mode first, and it's right. Upon booting up hard mode, instead of entering the car, we get this page out of a book that reads, "Listen all children and beware, the luring voice of the wild. He sinks into the imagination of every runaway child. Surrounded by all great nature, he grows the family he desires. When a child eats of his supper, they'll become a voice in his choir." We're then put into the game we're aware of, but the dialogue is changed. Instead of our game kid explaining that we're heading to a happy cave, it says that we tried to leave, but there was no point. And then soon after, instead of seeing our parents argue, this happens. The game immediately is telling you, hard mode isn't just the game again, but more difficult. This is a continuation. This is the same story, but the game keeps getting harder, almost as if it was easier to fall into this trap and harder to get back out. On our next night in the car, we meet Amy, an unfamiliar child we haven't seen before. She trusts the voice and is confused why we keep insisting that we're in a car. She tells us that we're in the happy cave. The book then continues this poem about the luring voice until we get to night 3, when a note card is taped onto one of the pages, which reads, "He exists between two worlds, the connection accidental, half in the physical world and half in the mental." This seems to be about Caleb. His mind and body appear to be in two separate realms, and our game kid, or as we've learned, the luring voice, doubles down on this connection, reiterating that Amy is right, Our demon and this car is not real. None of this is real except for the luring voice and the forest around us. The book then warns us that the luring voice can take on disguises and will note red eyes of the things it becomes. But at that moment, we break into reality for just a moment. And instead of the car around us, Caleb finds that he's tied to a chair still in the happy cave. On the right side are some more chairs and toys, and on the left side, Amy, backlit and similarly tied to a chair, but it's too dark to see her face. She's still confused about the car that Caleb keeps talking about, and she tells us that all we have to do is eat the man's supper and we can become like nature. Caleb is immediately upset by this, but the luring voice himself appears, telling him that we don't yell here, because this family is better than the one he left behind. But Caleb resists again, struggling in his chair and eventually opening his eyes back in the car. This is when the game truly comes to light as to what's actually going on. This car is Caleb's trauma, or rather, Caleb's defense mechanism from trauma. Caleb's mental protections were so strong and built up over the course of his life that not only could he have used them to shut out his parents, he's using them now to shut out the luring voice. It might not last forever, but a deity who's able to infect the minds of runaway children is being held back by Caleb's own defense mechanisms. He's able to escape to the only safe place he has left, the center of his own mind. And luckily, the next night is one of hope, something Caleb desperately needs at this point. The next page of the book tells that there is a way to defeat the luring voice. We need to find a special, secret guiding stone. Something that is hidden deep and changes shape depending on who's looking for it. And then back in the car, his demon appears before him again, but this time under the light, being clearly visible and confirming that it's a manifestation of his own parents. But they seem resigned now, saying that what's done is done, and that Caleb needs to stop haunting himself, the twisted version of his mother leaving him with, "There's more to life." And then it just leaves, leaving Caleb fully at peace. But before you can find peace, the luring voice appears again, telling us that Amy has eaten her supper and he's preparing our supper now, telling Caleb he needs to eat it and become full. It will make him new and whole. We begin the scavenging section again, but this time our parents aren't there. That demon has left us. That trauma has been overcome, but in its place is a pair of hands, still chasing us through the woods. After the scavenging section, we put the game kid down, and Amy excitedly tells us that she's become new, she's become nature, and tells us to look at her. We have another moment of lucidity as Caleb, back in the cave, dares to look at Amy, and he recoils at the horrifying sight she's become. It's hard to make out in the dark, but half of Amy's face is morphing into a sort of deer-like creature, with awful antlers beginning to sprout through her skull. This is what the luring voice has been promising us all along. What the first page of the book had talked about. In feeding us supper, he makes us like nature. He adds us to his choir, like the book said. The same choir who welcomed us to the happy cave itself. The deer, the rabbits, the flowers, all of them previous victims, kidnapped children who were forced to eat the supper and have their minds locked away by the luring voice. Something that will only be made awfully clear by the end of the game. But before we can fully process what's in front of us, the luring voice reappears, this time holding our supper, a golden apple, telling us that we must eat it. But Caleb once again resists, shutting his eyes and retreating back to his car. But for the first time in the entire game, the scene is tranquil, peaceful even. His parents are happily talking about their nice trip, and the sun is still up. In this moment, we see that Caleb has overcome his trauma. His demon has left him, as it told him himself, there's more to life. But even though we are mentally safe, we can't rest here. His body is still in grave danger. Caleb is still in the cave. And even when he tries to rest in this safe mind space, he wakes up once again in danger. But now, like I've mentioned, our demon is gone. The luring voice himself appears in our mind, trying to get in, tearing down all of our defenses and attacking us relentlessly. But after defending ourselves in this mental car Caleb has made for long enough, we receive one final book page, telling us that to find the guiding stone, we need to find something that looks like escape to Caleb. And diving deeper into our mental game, kid, we find it. Caleb's ultimate escape, the thing that he dove into to avoid the reality of his parents shouting about him and about their lives at every moment. Caleb's truest physical defense mechanism, his game kid. And back in the real world, Caleb has it in his hands and uses it to trap the luring voice, as it is also the guiding stone. Having overcome his trauma and using his own coping skills against the luring voice itself, Caleb gets up and begins to slowly walk away from the happy cave, ignoring the manipulations from the luring voice. And at the entrance, we find the now fully transformed Amy, stepping aside and letting us leave. But as we walk, the choir continues to sing. Even though he's contained in the guiding stone, the luring voice still has a hold on these children, forcing them to remain in the choir. They sing "Be Free," but they themselves will never be if the luring voice is allowed to live. So, deeper into the woods, Caleb finds a rock and holds his game kid high in the air. This is what escape looks like to Caleb. This is how he protected himself from trauma, but he doesn't need it anymore. He's overcome this trauma, and even if it crops up again, his own coping skills are strong enough that this physical object isn't necessary anymore. So he sacrifices it. Sacrifices his main way of defense, all in order to finally rid the world of this luring voice. And in that moment, the choir stops singing. Their minds are free. In this ending, it's unclear if the children will ever return to their original forms, all hundreds to thousands of them, but they're at least free, looking at the boy who just saved them from an eternity of singing. And I have a few more thoughts on this game besides just what it's really telling us, and that's the inspiration behind the luring voice. I was trying to connect what could have inspired a creature like that, so I was looking into mythology about runaway children being lost in the woods and being drawn to being turned into a creature. And I think I did find at least part of the inspiration behind the luring voice that might tell us more about how this game truly works. And that is in Leshy. No, not the card Leshy, but the nature spirit from Slavic folklore. The Leshy, like many mythology, has a lot of differing folklore surrounding it, but many people agree that it was a ruler of the woodlands and would draw people to get lost in the woods. It had the ability to disguise itself in various forms of people and animals, and while that's already fairly connected to the luring voice, there's two details that really drive the connection home. The first is that it's often said a Leshy would offer you food, and you should refuse this food, for if you eat it, you'll never be able to leave the woods again. Sound familiar? More importantly, Leshy were sometimes said to have the ability to whisk away children from abusive families into the realm of the woods. Now, this is all just a theory. There's no confirmation on what the luring voice was inspired from, but if it was inspired by the Leshy, then I think this scene of walking deeper and deeper into a pixelated wood is much more literal than we thought previously. When the Leshy would steal away children, it wasn't just into the forest, it was into another realm of the woodlands, a place typically inaccessible to humans, filled with fey creatures. And I think this is what we see as the forest pixelates around us. I believe the game kid, the one we've been seeing through this entire game, never truly once showed us an actual game. It wasn't a video game at all. From the very start, the luring voice was giving us visions through our game kid. The forest we see on this screen is the woodland realm, the realm in which the luring voice lives, a realm we're being given visions of from the luring voice through our game kid. And the Deadseat itself tells us this on the first night. When we see the happy cave for the first time, it's not a screen on our game kid, it's our entire vision. That's the home of the luring voice, a vision directly given to us by this creature. And we've seen it so much in the game kid that when we finally are faced with it in the real world, Caleb assumes, like the player, that it's just a delusion of Caleb, something that looks like his game. But his game was made to look like the forest realm the luring voice resides in. The demon we fight against that's in every thumbnail, including mine, about this game, that's not the real villain here. That's Caleb's own trauma that he overcomes with coping mechanisms. Caleb is strong and would have overcome that demon on his own. The real villain here, the real danger from the very first night is the luring voice, because he even tricks the player as to what this game is really about. So yeah, not FNAF, and a totally different style than what I usually do, but I hope y'all liked it, because I really, really love this game and wanted to cover it, and I felt really compelled to, especially since Secret of the Mimic comes out soon, so I wouldn't have time to do it afterwards. But if you are curious as to this full game, the Steam link is in the description. It's a $3 game. Go play it yourself. And also, you can watch me play the full game right here on the second channel, Rytoost. I edited down the live stream, and I made it a watchable video, so go watch that. In the meantime, if you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with hashtag ToastArt. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers, and until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.